Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. On today's show, we're talking about two different construction costs in the same location. We're vacationing in Mexico for a few weeks, and naturally the topic of real estate came up in a conversation, as it does. Our waitress by the swimming pool is in the process of building a new house for herself and her husband in Playa del Carmen. She shared what she spent for the land and the cost of the new construction of her new home. And on today's show, we're going to compare what she's paying versus what a foreigner would pay in the same location. There are restrictions on what foreigners can buy in Mexico. Within the restricted zones, that's 50 kilometers, about 31 miles from the shoreline, and 100 kilometers, or about 62 miles from an international border, foreigners can only hold property in a land trust. Typically, the trustee is a bank. Outside of these zones, foreigners can hold direct deed to the property with the same rights and responsibilities as Mexican nationals. Apart from the legal title, there are other differences as well. We've seen properties for sale to foreigners at prices that rival U.S. prices. Condos having 1,300 square feet in Playa del Carmen that are close to the beach are selling for around $600,000 with a $515 per month condo fee. This comes to a sale price of $461 per square foot. That's more than many U.S. cities. Our waitress purchased a plot of land that measures about 40 feet by 80 feet, fronting on a street, and the purchase price of the land was $10,000. Her home will have approximately 1,200 square feet on a single level, and her home will have 2 bedrooms, a single bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room. It will also have a covered porch at the front of the house, which is included in the square footage calculation. In the U.S. or Canada, we would probably exclude the square footage of the porch in the area calculation. Our waitress will not connect to city services initially, at least for water. She's going to be relying on well water that comes from a newly drilled well having a depth of 45 feet. Her total cost of construction was $30,000. So her house will cost a total about a little over $40,000. Now maybe she's not including all of the appliances in that cost estimate, so perhaps her cost is slightly understated. But the 2-bedroom condo near the beach, having roughly the same square footage and no land, is selling for more than 15 times the cost of our waitress's detached home. Now, salespeople we spoke with offered us fractional ownership of a luxury home also near the water. The price offered to us for a 1/12th share of that luxury home, a 40-minute walk from the beach, was $675,000 US. If you were to buy all 12 fractions, the full purchase price would be $8.1 million. Yes, the home was lovely. It had about 4,000 square feet. The finishes were high-end, and the vaulted ceilings and the curtain walls were lovely. But material and labor costs here in Mexico make it pretty hard to justify that $8.1 million price tag. A visit to Home Depot in Playa del Carmen showed that the cost of both tools and materials is lower than in the U.S. Ceramic tile that in the U.S. would cost more than $8 per square foot was selling for $2 a square foot. The selection and quality for ceramic tile was very high. The same tools that you would buy at Home Depot in the United States were definitely less expensive in Mexico. Now, there's a big difference in the construction cost for local people in Mexico versus the construction cost of foreigners. The cost of building and the construction services vary greatly depending on the market forces, and the overall demand. Those cost differences for locals building a home in Mexico can be attributed to a number of factors, including the materials used, the labor costs, and the overall demand for the construction-related services. Now, on the other hand, building a home for a foreigner in Mexico could have more expensive infrastructure. Foreigners in Mexico will often have to pay higher prices for the same materials. This is due in part to the fact that the Mexican market is more closed off and inaccessible to foreigners than it is to locals. Additionally, labor costs for foreigners tend to be higher than for locals. Foreigners tend to hire more expensive engineers and architects than locals would. This makes the overall cost of building a home in Mexico much higher for foreigners. Another factor that contributes to the higher cost is the lack of reliable and well-developed construction industry. Many foreign companies looking to build in Mexico often bring in some of their own infrastructure, and they bring in specialists and project managers from abroad. And finally, there's the cost of obtaining the permit. Foreigners, just like locals, have to obtain a permit from the local municipality before starting construction. That is a time-consuming process. But our waitress shared with us that she did also receive a building permit. She hired an architect to design her house, who completed the design and submitted the drawings to the building department for under $3,000. She was asking me if I thought she got a good deal getting her house designed for under $3,000. I told her yes, she got an amazing deal. So overall, the construction cost for local people in Mexico is much, much lower than it is for foreigners. And that means that the foreigner who can establish the right local relationships can often get things built for much less than the foreigner's tourism price. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.